Ryan had always considered himself a lucky man. At 30, he was living the life most people would envy. A successful career, a loving wife, and a beautiful home. But when he stumbled upon a secret hidden in the depths of his wife's phone, his perfect world shattered in an instant. It was a discovery that would force him to confront not only the lies that had been woven into their marriage, but also the truth about who he had become and who his wife truly was. Ryan had always been a man who valued stability. A predictable, orderly life had always been his goal. He had worked hard to climb the ladder of success in his career, spending countless late nights in front of his computer, crunching numbers and solving problems. But it was never about the money. No, it was always about providing for Laura, the woman who had been by his side since their teenage years. Their relationship felt like fate. From the moment they met in high school, there was a connection that neither of them could ignore. They were the perfect couple in everyone's eyes. Laura was everything Ryan had ever dreamed of: kind, intelligent, beautiful, and nurturing. She was the kind of woman who made everyone feel at ease, and to Ryan, she was the center of his universe. They had been together since their senior year of high school, and everything had seemed perfect. They attended the same college, had the same friends, and had the same dreams. Ryan proposed to her on the night of their graduation, and they were married soon after. It was the happiest day of his life. Their life together was nothing short of idyllic. They lived in a beautiful suburban home just outside the city, surrounded by lush green lawns and a picturesque neighborhood. Ryan was proud of the life they had built together. It was everything he had worked for, everything he had hoped for. But life wasn't just about the house and the paycheck. Laura had always been his emotional anchor. She made him feel understood, appreciated, and loved. He couldn't imagine a world without her. They had spent the last 5 years of their marriage growing together, traveling, enjoying their weekends with friends, and making plans for the future. They had even talked about starting a family in the next year or so. Ryan had always felt that everything was falling into place. He thought they were on the same page. He trusted Laura completely. But, as it often happens in life, things were not always as they seemed. It started off like any other Saturday morning. Ryan had woken up early to go for a run, and as usual, he returned home to find Laura in the kitchen, sipping her coffee and preparing breakfast. She greeted him with a smile, and everything seemed normal. They chatted for a while, catching up on the week's events, and then decided to spend the rest of the morning running errands and enjoying each other's company. That afternoon, after running errands, Ryan decided to relax and watch some basketball highlights on his phone. He was looking forward to the weekend, a rare moment when they had no plans. Laura had mentioned she needed to catch up on grading papers, so Ryan figured he could enjoy some quiet time by himself. As he was scrolling through social media, a notification popped up on his screen. It was from a friend he had met a few years back, someone he didn't talk to often. Ryan tapped the notification, expecting to see a funny post or a casual update, but what he saw instead was a text message from an unknown number. The message contained a link to a folder. Ryan hesitated for a moment. Why was he receiving a message from someone he didn't recognize? But curiosity got the best of him, and he clicked the link. It was a photo album. The first photo was an innocuous image of a sunset, something that could have been taken anywhere. But then, as Ryan scrolled down, his heart began to race. There were pictures of Laura. Ryan froze. He stared at the screen, unable to process what he was seeing. The images weren't just private, they were explicit. They showed Laura in intimate, compromising positions. And the worst part, she wasn't alone. The man in the photos was someone Ryan didn't recognize. His stomach churned as he zoomed in, studying the details. He couldn't tell who the man was from the photos, but the images left nothing to the imagination. It was clear that these weren't just a series of random pictures. They were the result of something planned, something hidden. Laura had been with another man. Ryan's hands trembled as he went through the pictures one by one. How long had this been going on? His mind raced, but there was no answer. Just the cold, undeniable truth staring back at him from the screen. He quickly closed the album, but it was too late. The images were burned into his mind. For a long time, Ryan just sat there, staring at the wall. His world seemed to spin around. The woman he loved, the woman he had trusted with his heart, had been hiding this from him. He couldn't believe it. Why hadn't he seen the signs? Ryan tried to push the thoughts out of his head, but they kept creeping back in. He tried to tell himself it was just a mistake, a misunderstanding, but deep down, he knew that wasn't true. There was no mistake. The photos weren't taken by accident. This wasn't some glitch in the system. Laura had betrayed him. He spent the next few days in a fog, barely able to concentrate at work. Every time he closed his eyes, the images came rushing back. He couldn't escape them. Had she been seeing this man for months? Or was this something more recent? He tried to act normal when he was around Laura, but it was hard. It felt like a mask, a performance. Every time she touched him, every time she smiled at him, Ryan felt like he was looking at a stranger. He didn't know who she was anymore. One night, after dinner, when Laura went to take a bath, Ryan picked up her phone. It was password protected, but he had always known the code. Laura had never hidden anything from him. But as he tapped in the numbers, something felt wrong. The phone was locked tighter than ever. Ryan's heart began to pound as he realized that Laura had changed her password. Was this her way of keeping him out? His stomach twisted at the thought. The silence in the house felt suffocating as Ryan stepped through the front door. The betrayal weighed heavily on his chest, each breath feeling like a laborious effort. The images, the texts, the video, all of it flashed before his eyes, and it was as if the walls were closing in on him. Laura had betrayed him in the most profound way, and now it was time for the reckoning. It had been hours since he had discovered everything. The photos, the messages, the shocking realization that his entire marriage had been built on lies. His hands trembled as he placed the stack of printed texts and photos on the kitchen counter, each one a damning piece of evidence that Laura could no longer deny. He paced the room, trying to steady his breath, but his mind was racing. His thoughts were in turmoil, spinning like a tornado. How could she do this? How could the woman he had spent years with, the woman he trusted more than anyone, have hidden this secret from him? Every moment they had shared, every laugh, every touch, every kiss, it all felt like a lie now. He had been so blind, so naive. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but Ryan ignored it. It was probably a message from Laura, asking where he was or what was happening. She had no idea what he had discovered, no clue that her world was about to come crashing down. A few minutes later, he heard the familiar sound of her footsteps in the hallway. His heart raced. This was it. It was time to face her, to confront her about the life she had been hiding. Laura walked into the kitchen, a soft smile on her face. "Hey, babe," she said casually, as if nothing had changed. But Ryan could see the subtle nervousness in her eyes, the way her shoulders were slightly hunched. She knew something was off. Ryan didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, staring at her with a mixture of anger, hurt, and disbelief. His mind was still processing the depth of the betrayal, but one thing was clear. He needed answers. "Do you know what this is?" Ryan finally spoke, his voice cold, a stark contrast to the warmth that usually accompanied their interactions. He gestured toward the papers on the counter, his eyes never leaving hers. Laura's smile faltered as she glanced at the stack of photos and messages. Her face paled, and her breath caught in her throat. For a split second, Ryan saw a flicker of panic in her eyes before she quickly masked it with a forced calmness. "Ryan, what is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer. He simply pushed the papers toward her, the explicit messages, the video that tore through the very fabric of their trust. It was all there in black and white, undeniable. If you're enjoying this story so far, do me a quick favor, hit that like button. It really helps the channel and lets me know you want more stories like this. Laura took a step back, her hand shaking as she reached for the papers. Her eyes scanned the images, and Ryan watched as the color drained from her face. It didn't take long before she dropped the stack, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She had been caught. "Laura, explain this," Ryan demanded, his voice rising with anger, disbelief, and confusion. "Explain why you're sending photos like this. Explain who this guy is." Her eyes darted around the room, looking everywhere, but at him. She was trying to gather herself, trying to form the right words, but Ryan could see the guilt written all over her face. There was no hiding the truth now. I can't explain," Laura finally whispered, her voice barely audible. She sank into a chair, her hands gripping the edges of the seat. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out this way. I never wanted to hurt you." Ryan's heart shattered at her words, but the anger coursing through him was overwhelming. She hadn't just hurt him, she had obliterated everything they had built together. She had destroyed his trust, his love, and everything he had ever believed in. "You think an apology is enough? After everything?" Ryan's voice was thick with rage. "You think sorry is going to fix this? You've been lying to me for months, maybe longer, and now you think a sorry is going to make everything okay." Laura's eyes welled with tears as she looked up at him, her voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never meant for it to go this far. It was a mistake." "Ryan, a huge mistake. I don't know what I was thinking." Ryan clenched his fists, struggling to hold back the wave of emotions crashing over him. A mistake. How could she minimize it like that? This wasn't just a mistake, it was a choice she had made over and over again. "A mistake?" Ryan repeated bitterly. "You say this was a mistake, but you've been hiding it from me for months. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. You chose to lie to me, over and over again." Tears spilled down Laura's face as she shook her head, unable to meet his gaze. "I never wanted to hurt you, I swear. It just happened. I don't know what came over me. I was feeling lost, and I got involved with someone else. I made a terrible choice." Ryan's breathing was ragged as the pain washed over him again. He couldn't even look at her. His chest felt like it was being crushed under the weight of it all. How could she do this to him? He turned away from her, needing space, needing distance. But it didn't change anything. It wouldn't bring back the trust she had destroyed. "Who is he?" Ryan asked, his voice shaking with emotion. "Tell me his name. Who is the man you've been sleeping with behind my back?" Laura looked down at her hands, unable to speak. She was shaking now, her entire body trembling as if she had just realized the full extent of her actions. "I don't want to talk about him," Laura whispered, barely above a breath. "Please, Ryan. I know it doesn't make sense, but I swear, to you it didn't mean anything. It was just, I don't know what I was thinking." Ryan's anger flared again, but it was mixed with something else, disgust. The woman he had loved, the woman he had trusted with everything, had been playing him for a fool. She had given herself to another man. And for what? A fleeting moment of passion? A desperate search for validation? "It means everything, Laura," Ryan said through gritted teeth. "You've ruined everything. I can't look at you the same way. I can't trust you anymore." Laura stood up, her hands reaching toward him, but Ryan stepped back, his eyes cold. He couldn't bear to be near her. He couldn't look at her. Not after everything. Not after what she had done. "Ryan, please," Laura begged, her voice breaking. "I know I've hurt you. I know I can't undo what's been done. But please don't leave me. Don't end this over one mistake." Ryan's chest tightened as he swallowed the lump in his throat. One mistake. It wasn't just one mistake. It was a betrayal that had shattered him to the core. "I think you already ended this, Laura," Ryan said quietly, the words cutting through the air like a knife. "I can't do this. I can't live in a world where I don't know if I can trust the person I'm married to. I'm done. He grabbed his keys and turned toward the door, but as he reached for the handle, Laura's voice stopped him. Ryan, please, don't leave me. Please don't walk away from me. I love you. Ryan closed his eyes, trying to keep his emotions in check. But the tears were threatening to spill over, and he had to fight to maintain his composure. How could she say she loved him after everything? How could she love him and betray him at the same time? I loved you, Laura, Ryan said softly, his voice thick with emotion. But that's over now. With that, he walked out the door, leaving Laura standing there, her sobs echoing behind him. As he drove away, Ryan could feel his heart breaking. With every mile, this was the end. The life he had built with Laura, the woman he had trusted, was gone. And nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed the confrontation were the hardest Ryan had ever faced. Every minute felt like an eternity, each second dripping with a mixture of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. He couldn't escape the mental images, the photos of Laura in the arms of another man. Every time he closed his eyes, it was as if the world around him disappeared, leaving him alone in that one haunting moment. But he wasn't just haunted by the images themselves. It was the betrayal that tore him apart. Laura, the woman he had trusted more than anyone, the woman he had spent years building a life with, had kept this secret from him. She had made a choice, and that choice had shattered everything Ryan believed in. Ryan had always considered himself a rational man. He prided himself on his ability to control his emotions, to think logically, to make decisions based on reason. But the discovery of Laura's infidelity shattered that control. The world he thought he understood had come crashing down, leaving him a shell of the man he once was. He stayed in a small apartment on the other side of town, a place that had once seemed like a temporary refuge, but now felt like a prison. The sterile walls did nothing to ease the pain. The silence in the apartment was deafening, and the weight of his thoughts was suffocating. It was impossible to escape his own mind. Ryan spent his days pacing the apartment, questioning everything. How had this happened? Why hadn't he seen the signs? They had been so close, so connected. How could Laura have hidden this from him for so long? And why had she done it? At night, he would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, his body physically exhausted but his mind refusing to shut down. His thoughts would race. He kept thinking back to all the little moments when things didn't feel quite right. The late nights at work, the moments when Laura seemed distracted or distant. But he had never suspected anything, because she had always been so good at hiding it. And that made the pain even more excruciating. She hadn't just lied to him. She had been living a double life. She had kept him in the dark. Ryan's phone had remained silent. No calls from Laura, no messages. At first he'd felt relieved. He didn't want to talk to her. Not yet. But as the days passed, the silence became unbearable. Was she regretting her actions? Was she even thinking about him? His frustration grew. He needed answers, but he didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing how much pain he was in. He wanted to pretend it wasn't happening. He wanted to tell himself that life could go back to normal, that they could somehow fix things. But deep down, he knew that wasn't possible. The trust was broken beyond repair. Even if Laura begged for forgiveness, even if she promised it would never happen again, Ryan could never forget the images. He could never forget the betrayal. A few days after the confrontation, Ryan went to a bar with a few colleagues. They had been supportive, but it was clear that none of them truly understood what he was going through. They offered their sympathy, but nothing could ease the sharp, aching void that had taken over his chest. As he sipped his drink, one of his co-workers, Sam, looked at him with concern. "Hey man, how are you holding up?" Ryan forced a smile, but it felt stiff, unnatural. "I'm fine. Just figuring things Sam gave him a knowing look but didn't press him further. There was nothing anyone could say to make it better. He had to process it in his own time, and right now, that meant facing the reality that his marriage was over. Back at the apartment, Ryan found himself staring at his phone once again. No messages, no calls from Laura. That night, for the first time since he had moved out, he decided to reach out. He wasn't ready to talk to her face to face, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Some part of him still craved answers. He pulled up her contact info on his phone. The last text exchange had been before everything had come crashing down. The mundane daily check-ins, the I love yous, the photos they had sent each other from their last vacation. It all seemed so far away now. What had gone wrong? Ryan typed a message to Laura. "We need to talk." A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. He stared at the message from her, his heart racing. He wasn't sure if he was ready for the conversation, but something inside of him knew it was inevitable. "I know. Can we meet tomorrow?" "Please, Ryan." Ryan took a deep breath, his emotions fighting for control. He hadn't seen her in days. The last time he had laid eyes on her, she had been sobbing uncontrollably in their bedroom, begging him for forgiveness. But it hadn't mattered. None of it mattered. Still, a part of him wanted to hear her side of the story. He couldn't keep living in this limbo, unable to understand the choices she had made. The next day, they met at a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town. Ryan arrived early, wanting to gather his thoughts before he saw her again. He wasn't sure what he was expecting from this meeting. Some part of him wanted closure. Another part wanted to scream at her, to demand answers. When Laura walked in, Ryan almost didn't recognize her. She had lost weight, her eyes were swollen from crying, and there was a heaviness about her that hadn't been there before. She seemed so vulnerable. For a moment, Ryan felt a pang of sympathy, but he quickly squashed it. She sat down across from him, her hands trembling. "Ryan, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. I can't undo what I've done. I've ruined everything." Ryan met her eyes, his gaze cold. "You're right, Laura. You can't undo it. What you did, I don't even know who you are anymore." Tears welled up in her eyes as she struggled to hold back a sob. "I never meant to hurt you. I was stupid. It was just one mistake, but I know that doesn't make it right. I've been carrying this guilt for so long, and I don't know how to fix it." Ryan's anger flared again. "You don't get it, do you? It wasn't just a mistake. You didn't slip up. You betrayed me. You lied. You kept secrets. And now I can't even look at you without seeing the man in those pictures. You've ruined everything we had." Laura choked on a sob. "Please, don't say that." "I'm so sorry, Ryan. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know how much I regret it. I was feeling lost, and I made a terrible decision. But I want to make things right." Ryan shook his head, his fists clenched. "There's no making this right. You've already destroyed everything, A moment. The air between them was thick with silence. Ryan could see the desperation in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. After the conversation, Ryan left the coffee shop feeling drained, empty, and defeated. He had gone in hoping for closure, hoping for answers, but all he got was more pain. Laura's apologies, her tears, her regret. None of it mattered anymore. He had already made his decision. He couldn't go back. He couldn't live in a world where he could never trust the person who was supposed to be his closest confidant. The woman he had loved had become a stranger. That night, Ryan sat alone in his apartment, reflecting on everything that had transpired. The anger still burned in his chest, but beneath it, there was something else. Grief. Grief for the life he had lost, for the future he had envisioned with Laura, now shattered into a million pieces. He wasn't sure what came next, but he knew that moving on would take time. It wasn't just about getting over the betrayal. It was about finding himself again. As he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he wondered if he would ever be able to trust again. And more importantly, he wondered if he could ever love again. But for now, all he could do was survive, one day at a time. Ryan's heart was heavy as he navigated the difficult road ahead. He wasn't sure what the future held, but one thing was certain: he couldn't go back to the way things were. What would you do if you were in Ryan's shoes? Could you ever forgive someone who betrayed you like this? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories of love, betrayal, and personal growth, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. You're not alone. This journey is something many of us go through, and it's important to keep the conversation going.